program today, we're going to have 6 panelists that are going to be sitting up here sharing their stories. Following each panelist, Dr. John W. Kenney will give us a wrap-up. He's a professor of theology and the retired dean of the Samuel D. Whit Proctor School of Theology at Virginia Union University, and he's the pastor emeritus at Ebenezer Baptist Church in Beaver Dam, Virginia. And he helps to put all of the stories together into context and fit them into history. So I'm going to ask that we give Dr. Kenney a hand around the floor. And I'm asking you to do that because he's going to give us something great already. So this is kind of our head start, and warm yourself for when we clap later on. So thank you. To close out the program, this wonderful community choir, you're going to see, they're over there sitting there, is going to share with us. And they're directed by Charles Tyler Spurlock. Now, many of us know him as Tyler Spurlock, but his first name is actually Charles. And for me, why that's important is because when I was in school, I went by my nickname. And as I was leaving, they threw a going away party for me, and they sent out formal invitations, and they used my first name, Anthony. Half my friends didn't show up because they didn't know who Anthony was. So we have to remember his name is Charles Tyler Spurlock. You want to know my nickname. And also with that, helping us out tonight is Dr. Antonio Hunt from Randolph-Macon College. He's the director of choral activities and assistant professor at Randolph-Macon College. And he brought all of these wonderful Randolph-Macon College students with him who's going to sing up a storm. Okay? So, sing a storm. Now, before they joined us, the community gospel choir was awesome. Awesome, we were awesome. Community gospel choir, awesome, okay. But they just added to our magnificence. So you're going to be blown away. You're going to be blown away when you hear what we can do together. Our first panelist, our first storyteller, will be Mr. Roger E. Braxton Sr. He's a lifelong resident of Beaver Dam here in Hanover County. He's blessed to be married to his wife, Juanita Braxton, for 50 years. 50 years. That's a congratulations. He has 3 adult children, 3 grandchildren, and he's a 1970 graduate of Patrick Henry High School. So he's come home. He's come home. He's a 2008 graduate of Virginia Union University of Lynchburg with a degree in biblical studies. For the past 13 years, he's been pastor at Eagle Baptist Church in Louisa, Virginia. He's a committee member and initial fundraiser with the Ashland YMCA. He's also served on several political campaigns, and he's currently a member of Hanover's Parks and Recreations Advisory Commission. With that, I'm going to ask Mr. Roger Braxton if he would share your story, please.
Sure. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
It's been a long time, but I began my school life in the fall of 1958. And right away, I knew that something was wrong when a nice shiny bus passed by without stopping. And my older sister said, "That's the bus for white kids." Our bus arrived, we got on, it was less desirable than what we had seen. Buses then picked up kids from 1st grade through the 12th grade. We all rode the same bus because the buses didn't go directly to the schools. We had a transfer, an unbelievable transfer at Tower Road and West Patrick Highway. The elementary kids got off of one bus and got on the bus headed to Bethany, and the high schoolers stayed on the bus as the transfer from the bus that was coming from western part of the county with the high schoolers. They got on and went to John M. Gandy High School. such things would not be even thought of today as to have 6 and 7-year-olds slipping and sliding, falling in a ditch, transferring from one bus into another just to get to school. Today, that would never happen. Schools back then, though, were pretty much cut and dry. Black teachers taught black kids, white teachers taught white kids. And it wasn't until much later, in the fight for open and complete schools, that we had a sprinkling of white teachers that came in to educate us, and a sprinkling of black teachers went into the white schools. But I will never forget my school teachers, my childhood school teachers such as Mrs. Carpenter, that was a very patient teacher in first and second grade, because there were no preschools during that time, and no kindergartens, no special eds. And as I look back, I understand how far we were and what a job, an amazing job that our teachers did to get us to where we needed to be. Later on, of course, there were people like Dr. Bracy and Mr. J.R. Fleming and Mrs. Ruth Giles and Ms. Ida Gales that taught us and had a real interest in our success. In high school, I played football. I was captain of the team in my junior year and did stats for the basketball team. I was president of student body and president of our FFA chapter. And I remember during those times, I was statistician for the basketball team. I was paid $2 for each game that I called into the Richmond Times-Dispatch with the stats. In the 1969 and 1970 school year, it had been mandated that total immigration was going to be the law. My time, you can see, was limited my interaction with my white schoolmates, because I was only here at Patrick Henry for 1 year. During that 1 year, we got along. And even today, some, when I see them in the grocery store or hardware store, we'll speak and we'll catch up on what we've gone through and the times that we've had. You know, I had a story that I wanted to tell here today. It involves the activity bus. When the county first started the activity bus for kids to get home to their neighborhoods safely, when it was done for the white schools, and they forgot about John M. Gandy. But it was through friendships, association with some of the children that had come over from Gandy to Patrick Henry that they had the activity bus. It was during a VOAG class under Dr. Bracy that we were talking about it and why it wasn't available to all of us. And if anyone knows Dr. Bracy, you know what his reaction was. What? He gave us our assignment and he took off for the office. And that afternoon we had the activity bus to come and pick us up from Gap. But here's the kicker. I lived out in the Coatesville area. There were some that lived further out in Beaver Dam and Montpelier. And on the very first pickup by the activity bus, when it got to Patrick Henry and all the white kids got on, they turned on the interior lights and ran the lights the entirety of the route. And the next day, when we were asked how things worked out, we said, okay, until we got to PH. And the driver turned often he didn't have the interior lights on, but he caused all the white kids, the white girls, to sit up front where he could keep eye. I guess one highlight that I want to mention that really stands out, and I think it was during my sophomore or junior year, when we had none other than it was to float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. You can't hit what you can't see. Muhammad Ali. He was on a journey that caused him to stop here in Ashland, and as one of the coaches were down picking up lunch, they ran into each other, and he came by John M. Gandy for a special call assembly. And I want you to tell you now that gym went wild to see the world's greatest. And that really is about the extent of what we went through. I think, and I'll put this out, I think we were prepared when we came out of school, either to move on to college or to move on to work. And if it had not been for those teachers, I sometimes wonder where we would be. Those teachers who were unpaid, and probably, if there's teachers in here today, they're probably saying we're still unpaid. And I would say I agree with you. I do have here today my oldest son, who is working here today, who is a teacher here at Patrick Henry High School. So he has returned home to be near his mama.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Braxton. As they say, the circle is yet unbroken. Our next storyteller is Lindsay Ryland. She was raised in Old Church area. She graduated from Mary Baldwin College with a history degree. She has an MBA from the University of Richmond. She moved around a bit, returned to Old Church in 1987. 1987. She's retired from 2 careers, banking, and she's a lay professional in the Episcopal Church. She served as a jury commissioner for Hanover County, and she's the past president of Hanover County's Historical Society. Currently, she serves on the Hanover County Historic Commission, as an election official, as president of Ashland Garden Club, and as a member of Emmanuel Episcopal Church in Old Church. With that, we'd like to ask Lindsay if you please share with us.
Thank you all so much for inviting me to be part of this. I attended last year and I've watched it online before, and I've always admired the people who said yes, so thank you so much. On September 4th in 1957, I got on bus number 39 as the first student pickup headed to Battlefield Park High School to start in the 1st grade. The bus picked up all the students, 1st grade to 11th grade, along the route. At that time, I understand there was not a 12th grade. I was petrified of all the high school kids that got on the bus, especially the boys in their leather jackets. And they all had ducktails, and they must have kept Brill Cream in business. When I finished the 7th grade at Battlefield, that summer my parents sat me down and told me that I would not be going to Lee Davis with all of my friends. My mother worked in the Hanover County school system at the time, and she was deeply concerned about the curriculum there and some of the policies that she had been made aware of at the school. In the fall of '64, I entered Albert H. Hill Junior High School on Patterson Avenue in Richmond. Then I went on from there to TJ, to Thomas Jefferson High School, and graduated in 1969. So I made a big leap from Hanover County, where I was a real country girl, into the city of Richmond. I didn't encounter any students of different races until I got to TJ in 1966. I had some interactions with the children of women who came to help my mother cleaning our house or babysitting for us, but I hadn't really had a lot of interaction with kids who were not white and were in my Sunday school class. There weren't any black kids at Hill, but for the first time in my life, I did encounter children who were Jewish and Catholics, which I'd heard about, but I'd never met. We also had a small number of Asian students in our classes as well. At Hill, I was fortunate enough to have a teacher, Julia Pollard, who inspired my budding interest in history. And as you heard, I was a history major. And at TJ, Ms. Jo Baker did her very best to make calculus make sense to me. After I got straight A's in math all the way until my senior year, that D in calculus always provoked a question on my college interviews. How we got to school was on bus 39 and then bus 64, but when I went into Richmond, my parents, one or the other, usually my father drove me to TJ or Hill every day. I never had my own car. But I do want to share a story about going to Battlefield on the bus. My mother worked at our school, and if that wasn't embarrassing enough, she rode the bus with us. And so we would walk down to the neighbor's house and get on the bus with the other kids like nobody on the bus knew she was our mother. So, but the minute she got a car, we rode to school with her every single day. We never got on the bus. Back in the 50s and 60s, there was not very much going on in availability for girls with outside activities. About the only thing we had was Girl Scouts. There were no school sports, there was no soccer, there was nothing outside of Sunday school and Girl Scouts. And when I got to Hill, all of a sudden these girls were saying, are you gonna go out for the tennis team? Are you gonna go out for the hockey team? I'm like, hockey? What? Never heard of it. Basketball? And I really wanted to be part of that. So at TJ, I tried out for the hockey team and I didn't make it. They've been playing since the 3rd or 4th grade. I had no idea. But I did manage to be able to be manager of the hockey team, so I did get my letter for doing that. But other things that we did during junior high and high school, there were school dances, there were clubs we could join, there were the Keyette Club, which is the female equivalent of the Key Club, which started at TJ while I was there. Some of the outside activities, there were sororities and fraternities that existed outside of the school system. And I remember the one that I was in did not allow Jewish girls, and I'm now very sad about that. Another thing that I found interesting when I went into Richmond to school was we didn't have to buy our books. We would come into our classroom and all the books would be there. And that was really different. It was so exciting when there was any time in the curriculum where we actually got a new book that nobody had ever used before, but we didn't have to pay for them, which I just thought was amazing. My experiences with integration, as I said, we did not encounter any black students until we got to TJ in 1966. And at that time, there were 3 black teachers at TJ. In my class of 1969, there were 18 black students. And from where I sat, it looked to me like they participated equally in academic programs, in sports, in the cadet corps. I was only in the classroom with them, though not in the locker rooms. My senior year, when it was homecoming, we elected a homecoming king. He was one of the black football players, Booker Hargrove. I'm still friends with him on Facebook. And Betty Whitehead, who lived in Windsor Farms. We were on the cusp of getting a little frisky and doing things that were a little more non-traditional as we graduated in 1969. And so we were very proud of ourselves for taking a leap and electing Booker and Betty that year. I felt like we were very well prepared in the Richmond City Schools for college. But I just remembered I wanted to tell another story. One thing that did make an impression on me when I was in junior high school. We all had braces. And one weekend, one of my wires broke. It was sticking right over the side of my mouth. So my mother called the orthodontist on Monday morning and asked if I could come in that day. Well, he didn't have any appointments that day, but I could come the following day. But it was the day that he treated colored children, he said. And so I went into the office on that day. When I walked in, I sat down in the waiting room. I hadn't been in the seat for 10 or 15 seconds when the lady who worked in the office came and said, "Lindsay, come with me." And I said, "Why? Is he ready for me?" She said, "No, but he's going to work you in, but come with me." And I said, "Why?" And she said, "Just come with me." So I got up and I followed her into the orthodontist's private office, and they had me sit in the private office by myself because I was the only white kid in the waiting room. And I didn't want to leave the waiting room. I saw no reason for my needing to leave the waiting room. But that really unsettled me, and that is something that has stuck with me my entire life. As far as the academic preparation that I felt like I got at TJ, it was excellent. TJ students were known in all the colleges. They knew that if they had a kid from TJ, they had somebody that was going to be able to handle the academics at whatever college we went to. Most of us in high school were college bound. We went everywhere. We went everywhere from Harvard to then RPI, UVA, VPI then. The women's colleges were well represented. We were academically well prepared for anything. There was no community college system back then, so kids who might not have been college bound didn't have many options, but a lot of them went into the service. They attended schools like Smithfield Massey Business College or went to nursing school. So we felt like we were all ready to do whatever was next. I'm still friends with people that I went to Battlefield with in the first grade. One of them is in a hunt club that rents my property and brings me Brunswick stew every year. I go out to dinner with friends from Battlefield, from Hill, and from TJ to this day. I'm on the committee to plan our 55th reunion coming up this fall from TJ. And I will say that I would like to thank Facebook for allowing all of us to reconnect over the years. It's been very interesting. But thank you all for this invitation and the opportunity to share my story.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you. There are many people who criticize Facebook, but I have found many family members that I didn't know I knew through Facebook, so don't knock Facebook. Our next speaker is Dr. Clem E. Gilper. His education is from Virginia State College at the time with a BA in history. He also attended Ohio University where he received a master's in international affairs. He also is a graduate of Penn State University where he has a PhD in community planning. He's a Nittany Lion. He's a retired assistant professor of community systems and African American studies at Pennsylvania State University. His other teaching and lecturing credentials includes teaching and lecturing in Canada, Malaysia, and the U.S. Army War College. In terms of service projects, he's been involved with the U.S. Peace Corps as a volunteer in Nigeria. He's dealt with foreign policy as an associate of Central Pennsylvania. He's been to Pennsylvania Prostate Cancer Coalition, and he's also part of the Penn State Harrisonburg Model UN for high school students. Dr. Gilper, will you share with us?
Thank you. One correction, it was Penn State Harrisburg, not Harrisonburg.
Okay.
Can you imagine the confusion sometimes if you're going to Pennsylvania and your luggage goes to Virginia? It happens quite frequently.
All right.
I am probably the wrong Gilpin to be on this program, but I would like to thank my high school classmate, Mary Waddy, for inviting me to participate. The reason why I say that is that I had no story to tell about integrated schools in Hanover County. I never did. As a matter of fact, growing up in this county, I probably did not know 10 white people, even though my county when I grew up was at least 65% white. Of course, unlike today, where it's 90-some% white. I noticed that, looking at demographics, that Hanover County's black population is slowly fading away. And there's something unique happening in this county. I don't know what it is right now. But when I see who was on this program previously, like my good classmate from both high school and college, Jimmy Harris, and also the husband of my oldest first cousin, Joseph Giles, if they were involved, it must be a great program. So since I had no stories to tell about integration in Hanover County, I decided to use my time to talk about where I'm from. And of course, I did not know that my neighbors would be on the program. And the mere fact that there are 2 people from Coatesville on one program is unusual. I mean, unbelievable. And also, 2 that grew up in St. James Baptist Church is also unusual. And I'm willing to bet you there are probably a few people here from that community. Where are you? Stand up, please. A little bit about Coatesville. We are we're up the road from the Ashtonbury Farm. That's what most people know about. I always felt it strange from Hanover County with these huge post office addresses like Beaver Dam. Now, I look at a map and Beaver Dam stretches from California to almost to New York City. Maybe I exaggerate a little bit. It's huge on the map. So I'd like to emphasize my home community, Coatesville. Coatesville is nestled on a ridge line between the Newfound River and the Little River. Not a bad place to grow up, except for one fact. I think of Coatesville as being the epicenter of plantocracy. A large word, but basically an economy that was dominated for several hundred years by plantation economies. And to a great extent, not much has changed. Beautiful farms, I love them. Huge woodlands, I love them. But in the same families that owned my ancestors. And I know somewhere on that land, ancestors were buried. See, you got to realize that in Hanover County for a long time, there were very few postal addresses in rural areas. And we're fortunate enough to have in a family Bible information on the birth of several relatives going back over 150 years. For example, my father, John Moses Gilpin, was born in Orkney Mill in 1902. His mother was born at Edgewood in 1873. Her mother was born at Springfield in 1846. Her mother was born at Wickham in 1817. That's a huge swath of American history there, folks. Except for that family Bible, there's no record of these individuals anywhere. They lived. They died. No records of their existence, hardly. So that is part of, indeed, my history of growing up in that area. I read quite a bit. And I remember reading a book about Frederick Law Olmsted. Is the name sound familiar? I see some heads bobbing. Central Park, Brooklands Park, the Capitol grounds of Washington, D.C. A great American author. Olmsted, in a trip through Virginia, crossed over this old wooden bridge, and soon after crossing it, he saw a stack of lumber ready to put on a train. And I was reading that, where could that have been? He was crossing the North Anna River, the railroad landing at Hewlett. I go, wow, that's my whole area. So you mean to tell me that my folk didn't pick cotton? They cut lumber. Not very glamorous occupation, I must say. Not that cotton picking was very glamorous anyway. But to a great extent, I grew up in a community where not much had changed, because my dad worked at a lumber mill in Beaver Dam. My grandfather ran a small sawmill on his property. My first job was working in lumber. So 200 some years, not much had transitioned. But one big transition did occur. On the eve of the Civil War and the abolition of slavery, about 200 people of my complexion who attended the Mount Olivet Church, now on Coatesville Road, were invited to leave to form their own congregation. They formed a church called Ebenezer Baptist Church in Hanover County, Virginia. Sometimes you have to be sure of what you're saying because people get churches confused. Because there are other Ebenezer churches out there. About 30 years later, members of that church who lived north of the Newfound River decided to form their own congregation. Now, what made it even more interesting is that many of those people were descendants of one couple, Moses and Lucinda Smith. And if you know anything at all about Coatesville and St. James Baptist Church, there are a lot of Smiths. I have cousins named John Smith, uncle named John Smith, grandpa named John Smith. It gets so confusing. Thank goodness for my father's father, who came from outside of that community, and thus there's some Gilpins out there. Not very many of us, but at least a few of us. But let me continue. I was reading recently a publication about schools in Hanover County. And I noticed that one school was absent from the reporting. And I knew it had to be in there somewhere or another. The name of the school was Jenny Nelson. Now, I looked at all the other names of schools, black schools in the county. Most one room. And they had Brownville, Georgetown, Bethany, were named after churches and places. Why is the school at St. James Baptist Church called Jenny Nelson? Have you ever heard the name before? Yes. Oh, there's a couple of hands going up from my community, and no one else. So I am baffled. So I started to research who this person was, and I feel like an idiot because I came across some information and I didn't document the source. Now, if any of you are in school now, document your sources immediately. Otherwise, you're losing information. I did find out that she was a member of the great family from Oakland, further up Old Ridge Road from where we live. And that her larger family were the Pages. Now, come on, folks. Some of you must have heard of the Pages before. Not the Page at the college library, but the Pages of Oakland. The most illustrious member of that family was Thomas Nelson Page. Oh, I love heads going up and down like that. I mean, nothing satisfies a professor more when heads move. And they're not sleeping. And if you know this individual, you know he didn't look very kindly on black folks. I mean, some of the most horrendous comments made. Oh, well, I'm sorry. He looked kindly on the folks before slavery was abolished. The mammy, who probably suckled him as a kid. But after slavery was abolished, a transformation occurred. We went from kind and generous people to being lazy, shiftless, and the killer all killers out to get white women. Now, what other label need to put on a black male than that label? That's what Page did. That's what Page did, but I digress. It's Jenny Nelson. I found out that Jenny Nelson must have been a rebel in her day. Started an informal school for enslaved people long before the Civil War in Hanover County. We needed historical marker people. I don't think there's any other place like this out in the entire country. Well, they found out what she was doing. They slapped her hand and said, no, 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 you can't do that. So she stopped the school. But the name stuck. So something about that individual and what she did was endearing in my community 50 to 60 to 70 years later. We need to know more about this individual. He should be upheld as one of the outstanding citizens of Hanover County of all times, in my opinion. There's some misinformation out there about Jenny Nelson's school. I've seen references to suggest that it started in 1933 and ended in 1936. That's the oral history. Even more importantly, last week, while looking at some information on the internet, I came across a dissertation. Now, you got to admit, if your life is so boring on a Sunday, you read dissertation, something's wrong with it. Unless it's yours. But indeed, I was reading this dissertation, and it was, I was shocked to see it. It was a dissertation written by a doctoral candidate, William and Murray, published in 1907. No, 1924. It wasn't this year. 2007. You got the date right. Detailed account of this county. And she talked about a group called the Countywide League. They were a group of black leaders who tried to persuade the county. I mean, once you lost the vote, you had little ways to persuade anybody to do anything for you. So without the vote, you don't count as a citizen. So they persuaded the county to start a high school. Now, this had been mandated by the state 3 decades previously. But sometimes it takes a county a little bit longer to get with the agenda. Well, needless to say, it was resisted. It was resisted. But as she talked about meetings that were being held, and I'm looking at this and I'm going, wow, held at Jerusalem Baptist Church, Salem Baptist Church, Union Baptist Church. You see where I'm going with this? Bethany Baptist Church, and Ebenezer. I go, wow, they just drew a circle around St. James. Where were those folks? How come they weren't involved? She did mention, however, that there was one minister by name of last name Reverend Temple. And I go, wow, that's who married my parents. So St. James was involved. You know, I guess it feels sometimes that my community was like the Roger Dangerfield. Can you get some respect out there, people? Just a little bit of respect. But nonetheless, they eventually got Hanover County Training School, not a high school. And for my community, if you didn't have a car, you didn't go to high school. It just so happened that my maternal grandfather bought a car. It paid growing tobacco at the time. He did. That allowed his younger children to attend that school. As a matter of fact, the last member of my family, Mrs. Thelma Jackson, went to the training school, but graduated in the auditorium of John M. Gandy School. I entered John M. Gandy, graduated in '61. As a matter of fact, I was in the first class to go 12 years. Now, I don't want to embarrass anyone, but there must be people in here who went to the 11th grade. Don't raise your hand, don't shake your hand, don't give yourself away. So I think we were smarter people. I went to the 12th grade, but nonetheless. So 12 years of school, no white teachers, no white classmates, no white students. I really became aware of integrated, segregated schools when my school bus passed by the new Patrick Henry, this building, going into Ashland. I didn't look back. I liked my school. I loved my teachers. But I do recall in my senior year going to school earlier for meetings and things at school. And this was the only instance I could recall of being in a segregated environment in Ashland. See, my dad never drove a car. When he was 12 years old, his father died. He and his mom moved to Baltimore. He came back to Virginia in his 30s, never learned how to drive. So we didn't go anywhere. The country store, the church, the neighbors' houses, we never came into town. So coming into town to go to high school, I'd be dropped off, going to the train station. Now, I'm trying to remember, was I in the north waiting room or the south waiting room? I now read that one was larger than the other one. I did not notice that. But I was in one of those waiting rooms, and off to school I would go. I didn't go to the segregated movie theater. My older sister and brothers did, up in the attic, wherever the seats were for black kids. Because by the time I started going to the movie, it was after 48. And by 48, there was a second movie theater in town. So I never went to that movie theater. And beyond that, most of my teenage and young adult life was spent in college at Virginia State, graduated in '66. And then '66 on, I was out of Hanover County, but I came back home all the time. So I think I know the county extremely well. It's sort of interesting that when the Ashland Rotary Club, which I'm a member, started holding its meetings at Trackside, I'm not going to get commercial, even the food is pretty good. That was the old movie theater. Now, I think there should be a plaque on the front of it that says what this place was all about, but indeed that's the story for another day. What interests me more so than looking back, and this is a different program, is what's happening in Hanover County today. And rather than going into any of my details about it, I try to go to as many planning committee meetings as possible, because there are some changes that need to occur in this county that I don't see happening right now. So that's my story.
Thank you, Dr. Wilkins. Thank you for sharing. Our next speaker is Linda Dickey McGovern. Dickey, as she likes to be called, was born and raised in Ashland. She lived in 2 different homes on the same block of College Avenue for all but 14 of her 73 years. She attended Henry Clay Elementary School, graduated from Patrick Henry High School in 1958, graduated from Randolph-Macon Women's College in 1972 with a degree in Russian history. Moved to Washington, D.C., worked in several doctor's offices, sparked an interest in going to medical school, and graduated from MCV in 1989. Interesting. Continued with 5-year residency in pathology at MCV and practiced general pathology for 22 years at Henrico Doctors Hospital. Thinking you're a doctor. She doesn't like to be referred to as doctor, but okay. She retired in 2016. She and her husband Malcolm live in the house where she grew up, and they have 1 son and a 7-month-old granddaughter. Please help me welcome Miss Vicki.
Growing up in Ashland in the 1950s and 1960s was, to put it simply, the best of both worlds. I have vivid memories of walking up to Barnes Drug Store, getting an ice cream soda, meeting up with friends and neighbors at Cross Brothers Grocery Store, going to football and basketball games at Randolph Macon with my parents, and last but not least, shopping at Painter's Department Store. Not to mention taking ballet under the tutelage of Idea Steel Trailer, and against the wishes of my sister and me, cotillion, both at the Girl Scout House. Ashland had much to offer a young girl like me, but we were close enough to the big city, Richmond, where we could take weekly trips with our mother to go shopping at Mellon Rhodes and Tallheimer's and to enjoy an ice cream cone at the Clover Room. Looking back on my childhood and teen years, I have come to the conclusion that I lived a somewhat sheltered and privileged life. I grew up on College Avenue in 2 different homes, which were side by side. Excuse me. Most of those years were spent in the house that was built by my grandfather in 1925, and after a 14-year hiatus in Washington, D.C., my husband and I moved back to Ashland and have lived in that home for the past 33 years. When my grandfather planned the house, he included a maid's room, replete with small bathroom and back staircase to be used only by my grandfather's help. Although our home was only several blocks from Berkeley town, we never really had any contact with the blacks who lived there, with 2 exceptions. Catherine Thompson, whom my brother renamed Bah, B-A-H, was a housekeeper and cook who worked for us weekdays and whom my father picked up and took home at night after a day's work. My brother picked the name Bah out of the clear blue sky, but my friends and family endearingly referred to her with that term for years. My brother, sister, and I loved Bah, and she certainly felt like part of the family. We visited her at her home on the corner of Berkeley and Henry Streets after she retired and was in declining health. We also attended her visitation at Dabney Funeral Home and attended her funeral at Shiloh Baptist Church. The other exception was Lightfoot's Bakery on Henry Street in Berkeley town. Man, could Mr. Lightfoot decorate a birthday cake. Yummy white icing and pink roses, beautiful pink roses, so beautiful that my sister and I would save the roses. We'd take them off the cake, only to realize that we had to throw them out several months later. But that was the extent of my contact with anyone in Berkeley town. As far as my education is concerned, I attended public school from 2nd through 12th grade. 1st grade was at Mrs. Dillon's home on South James Street. That is where I met my lifelong friends, many of whom still live in Ashland or Richmond, and one of whom is in the audience today. Henry Clay Elementary was my second home from 2nd to 7th grade, and where I have very fond memories of several of my teachers. Mrs. Grattan in 2nd grade, Miss Sweet in 5th grade, and Miss Ollie Mae Hope in 7th grade. Mrs. Grattan and my father were on town council together at the time, and I remember many humorous comments on my report card traded between the two. Many students were terrified of Miss Hope, but I came to be one of her favorite students, and she one of my most memorable teachers. I have lunch occasionally with several of these lifelong friends, and we still discuss our teachers, who we liked, who we disliked, etc. I was fortunate that my mother was able to transport us to and from school. Because Henry Clay was less than a mile from our home, she often would pick us up for lunch and bring us home. Next stop was Patrick Henry High School, which I attended 8th through 12th grade, spanning the years 1963 through 68. There was no middle school in those days. Again, our mother drove us to school. I was very fortunate that I never had to ride a school bus. I was very much involved in student life and have so many memories of my teachers who helped mold me into a responsible and caring adult. Holly Hollingsworth, my English teacher in 11th grade, and Lou Flanagan, coach for many school sports and dedicated teacher of government, especially stand out in my memory. And it was at Patrick Henry that I first had any real contact with black students. Chastine King and Mario Mitchell entered our class junior year in 1966. Both were very quiet and respectful, and I don't really remember much about either of them except that Chastine played football and basketball, and Mario, I believe, was in the band. Other than that, in reviewing my yearbook, they were not involved in any other activities such as cheerleading, FHA, and FFA, or any other social or school-focused clubs for that matter. I was aware that there were several other black students in the classes below me whom I did not know. I don't know what plans the future held for Chastine or Mario, or if they even remain in the area. In conclusion, when I was approached about being on this panel, I thought to myself, I can't really think of much to say about my early life in Ashland regarding interaction with the black community or any issues regarding racial bias. No black girls attended my ballet class. No black person sat next to me at the fountain at Barnes Drugstore. And certainly no blacks were present downstairs at the Ashland Theater, where my white friends and I hung out. I didn't really think much about the fact that there was a separate black theater on Railroad Avenue, which Dr. Gilpin referred to, where in the early segregated days, a reel would be shown at the white theater and then carried over to the black theater, known as the cab theater, to be shown an hour or so later. And I never thought twice about my grandfather segregating his maid in the back part of his home, relegated to using her own back stairs and entrance, or that white students only attended Henry Clay Elementary and black students John M. Gandy. That was just the way it was in those days. I was not aware of any tension or racial conflict during these formative years, and I saw no evidence of discriminatory attitude or action on the part of anyone in either race. But on the other hand, I'm not so naive, looking back on that period, as to assume all was well and would remain the same over the intervening years. Thank you.
Thank you. Vicki, we thank you for what you shared, and we thank you for your contributions to our community. Next, I'd like to invite Lou Flanagan. I think we saw him on a little video earlier today. Louis V. Flanagan Jr., born in 1943 and raised in Tappahannock, Virginia. He graduated from Tappahannock High School in 1960, graduated from Washington and Lee University in 1964 with a BA degree. He taught and coached at Patrick Henry High School from 1964 to 1978. He opened the Dew Real Estate Incorporated in 1978. He's now a broker with Long and Foster in the same location. He married the beautiful, wonderful Joanne Dew in 1964. They have 3 great children and 4 fantastic grandchildren, maybe a 5th on the way. Without further ado, Lou, would you share with us?
Thank you very much. I really look forward to doing this. Been asked a couple of times by several people to share my thoughts. I always found an excuse to say no, but then I get a call from John Gordon. Have you ever tried to say no to John Gordon? I did make a deal with him, however. I told him if he sang at my funeral, I would be glad to do this. So I've got a lot of witnesses as to that deal that was made. As we said, I was born in 1943 in Tappahannock, which I'm sure makes me older than just about everybody in this room. And growing up, I was blessed with 2 fantastic parents. A mother who thought I could do no wrong, and I'm sure spoiled me rotten. A father who taught me that I was no better than anyone else, also that no one else was any better than me. really made me believe that I only had to do my best at what I had to have to be better than anybody else, but I don't care whether it was sports or school or what. I need to be able to just say, Dad, I did my best. And last, the thing that I got from him, and it was probably the most important thing I think he gave me, was he told me, he said, the most important thing I will ever give you is your name. Don't screw it up. I've tried to pass that on to my kids and my grandkids, and now I'm fortunate enough to have a great-grandkid. So, being raised in Tappahannock, went to, obviously, to Tappahannock High School, and here I was coached by a man named Henry Ashton, who outside of my father, I had the greatest respect for of any man that I had ever known. I'm sure it's why I ended up coming into coaching here. He taught me, he set the example. It wasn't that he just lectured me or anything like that, but he always set the example that I wanted to strive to attain. And fortunately, I was actually able to, one year when we were coaching here, our game was scheduled with Tappahannock High School, so I actually got to coach against him one time, which was wonderful. We were a lot bigger school than Tappahannock High School, so I would say that answers that one. The summer of 1964 was when I graduated from Washington Lee University. Until that time, I had never been on a team with, I had never been in school with any black student, which is pretty unusual when you finish college with that. The only black person that I had ever had any real contact with was a woman by the name of Kate Pratt, and she worked for us, for my parents. She cooked and cleaned and helped raise me. I love that woman, and I feel like if she was here, she would say she loved me. And she must have been happy there, because after she stopped, her sister came to work there. So I'm assuming that it was a good environment for her. I started thinking back about, where would I have had contact with anyone from any other population? Where would I possibly have done this? And you start thinking about things and you say, okay, socially, well, that didn't exist, because there were never any social functions where black and white kids in Tappahannock got together. I've already said there was complete segregation, so obviously I wasn't in school. The church, obviously, well, churches today are probably the most segregated institutions that you can find, which is kind of a shame. I have been fortunate to hear 3 black preachers preach. One was from Shiloh Baptist Church, Michael Shannon, and I remember him singing at our church, Joshua fit the battle of Jericho. And he explained that his mother had taught him right. He knew the word was fight, but in the song it was fit. I can remember Jerry Ross, who played for Maggie Walker High School and actually coached against him. He was also at Randolph-Macon, and he preached at St. James the Less. And I will never forget, I went to the altar because he would ask for special prayers, and I can remember him taking my hands, and I've had some wonderful preachers at St. James the Less, but I never had chills go up my spine as to when he was holding my hands and preaching to me. And then, of course, Reverend Kenny, who everybody in here, I think he's had an effect on as many people's lives in this county as anybody. I've got to tell the one story on you, and I shouldn't do it, but I'll never forget him preaching at our church, and he was preaching about Jesus raising Lazarus from the dead. And I can see him right now walking across the front of that church. He took his hands like that, and he screamed, "Lazarus, And he turned to the congregation and he said, you know, you gotta yell loud to wake up the dead. Apologize for that. So when I came to Patrick Henry in '64, there had been no contact with any of the black population. It just didn't exist. I guess the only place where it could have existed, and it's been brought up here, was in the movie theater. And when you went to the theater, black sat in the balcony, the white sat on the first floor. I never thought of anything being wrong with that. And I have beat myself up over that. It just never occurred to me that there was something wrong with it. It's all I'd ever seen. So there's really no excuse. But anyway, in '64, that summer was a big year for me. One, I graduated. Two, I got married to Joanne, and how she's put up with me this long, I will never know. But we will be celebrating our 60th anniversary this summer. Before integration, obviously what was in existence was known as freedom of choice. The first few students that came to Patrick Henry High School, I did not have in my classes. My primary class that I taught was government, and that's of course a senior class. I did touch some more classes, but primarily that was my field. So I didn't have any relationship during those early years of freedom of choice. The first, I guess, basketball team that I coached at the varsity level, there were probably only 3 or 4 black students, because this was before integration, that were on teams that I coached. And if I remember correctly, Ted Carter was one of them, Clinton Jackson was one, Jim Davis was one of the first blacks that I had an opportunity to coach. In the first year of varsity ball, we won 2 ball games. It's amazing how brilliant I became as a coach the following year when integration took place. I think the tallest person on the team that I coached before was about 6'2". I inherited a 6'8" center named Perry Robinson, a 6'5" center named Dennis Jackson, who was probably the most powerful man I ever coached, and a 6'3" forward named Sam Smith that probably could out-jump the other 2. And when you put them on the same team, on the same floor with Eddie Webb, who was taken into the first Hall of Fame here at Patrick Henry, and Jamie Taylor, we were quite a team. And within 2 years, we were actually playing in the regionals. But I think a lot of people think it was just because of that. I think it was my brilliance. I think I can honestly say that in the 10 years that I coached varsity ball here at Patrick Henry, I never had one racial problem on this team. I think there are probably several reasons for it, but I think the main reason is I never treated a white kid and a black kid any differently. I also respected everyone that I taught and everyone that I coached. And I demanded that they respect me. I also demanded that they respect people with authority, in that case, referees. And I don't believe in the entire 10 years I coached there was any student that played for me that ever had a technical foul called on them for arguing with a referee. I can't say that about their coach. a couple people to tell one of the stories on technical foul, so I will share it. I have no idea how it started, but I have a phrase that I use when I'm irritated, and that is, Judas Priest. And there was a call made in one of the games, and I jumped up and I yelled, Judas Priest! And the referee immediately gave me a technical foul. And I said, well, what is that for? He said, we're not bringing the Lord into this gym. I said, well, it sounds to me like you got a personal problem because I take him everywhere I go. And he gave me another one. You know, that I think that also the thing that prevented or led to no racial issues was that we tried to have the feeling that, you know, we're going to win as a team or we're going to lose as a team. And it's a team. As the old saying goes, there's no I in team. And I think that the black and white kids, they all wanted to win, but there was no I there. They all worked together. And that was the one thing that I was so proud of with these kids. And you know, you also want them at that time to have fun. You know, you're not going, most of the kids are not going on to play college ball, so you want to enjoy that time. And there's so many examples of the way that the black kids and the white kids got along with the teams that I'm familiar with. I can remember during the practice session, and maybe there's something I had to explain, and the kids would sit down, and one of the white kids would squeeze in between two of the black kids and said, let's turn this thing into an Oreo cookie. Well, at that time, no one took offense. I mean, everybody laughed, everybody joked, and it was fun. Another example was we were playing Lee Davis. I'll never forget this as long as I live. And we were beating them pretty bad. I just heard I'm from Lee Davis. But anyway, we were beating them pretty bad this night. And they went into a full court press. We threw the ball away about 3 or 4 times in a row. Well, I didn't want them to stop what they were supposed to be doing and start getting in bad habits, so I called a timeout. Reminded them about their offense, sent them back on the floor. One of the funniest people that I think I ever coached, and one of the best athletes I ever coached, was a young man named Miguel Smith. Noah Smith. Another coach for the war. Miguel takes the ball, we set a screen. I won't use the other one's name. George. George rolls towards the basket. Miguel throws in the ball, he lays it in. Problem was, it was Lee Davis's basket. I did not call timeout. Miguel calls timeout. We're walking over, and I'm thinking, what in the world am I going to say to this group of kids now? So they walk over, they sit down, and I kneel down in front of them. And before I can open my mouth, Miguel says, George, you the dumbest black I have ever seen in my life. Except he didn't say black. And the entire team laughed about it. No one is taking offense. You talked about Coatesville. I had several, of course, the Smith boys were prime examples, but I had a lot of kids from Coatesville. They could get home, but they had no way a lot of times of getting back, you know, for a ball game. So they would go home with me, and Joanne, God love her, would fix them a big pot of spaghetti, and we'd all sit around the dining room table, and we would eat dinner, and then come back and play a game. And I think that certainly helped my relationship with them. You break bread with somebody, it makes a difference. Another great example was one of the kids that I coached. After he graduated, got married, two of the white kids on that team were in his wedding. That didn't always happen. So, and one last example, then I'll shut up. We've been hearing stories about when the walkout occurred here at Patrick Henry, and the way it was explained to basically the teachers, and so I stand to be corrected, was that the request had been made of the administration that they be able to sing during Black History Week the Black National Anthem. And I'm sure most of you know, but anyway, lift any voice and sing, and I'm certainly not going to sing it to you. But anyway, it's my understanding that that request was turned down, and the students were told that we have one national anthem now, and that's what you can sing. And that then, when the assembly occurred, the song was sung. Not saying that the principal was right or wrong in saying what he did, but then he made that decision. The kids were suspended, the leadership, and the next day is when the walkout occurred. I didn't have most of my classes, if you all remember this school, it used to be a campus-style school. Most of my classes were in the J building, which was on the backside, so a lot of what was going on, I never saw. I mean, you had to stay with your class. But several members of my basketball team that year came and asked if they could sit in my room. And obviously I said yes. I don't think I've ever admired a group of kids much more, because their friends were walking by the windows, yelling at them, calling them Uncle Toms. I think they were probably afraid they were going to be suspended, because we had a ball game that night. And we went down to Douglas Freeman High School. And I'm going to use this kid's name because I felt a lot of him and I think he played a big role. One of the captains of the team was a young man named Dennis Farley. And he came to me and said, "Coach, do you mind if I talk to the team?" And I said, "Absolutely, I would love for you to do that." So after I'd done my talk, I left the room because I wanted them to be able to, if they had things to discuss, I wanted them to be able to discuss it. They went on the floor that night. They played probably one of the best games I saw. I think they wanted to prove something. I think they wanted to prove to their friends that they could work together. I do think it made a difference, and I certainly admire that group for what they did. I got so many stories flying through my mind now but I'm not going to tell them. But I can remember one other time, and it shows the respect that I think these kids had. A few years after I stopped coaching, I went to a ball game, because I used to attend most of them. And I was sitting up in the bleachers, and one of Patrick Henry, and I don't like admitting this, but one of Patrick Henry's players got into an argument with the official. And I mean an argument. Ripped off his jersey and slammed it on the floor. One of the kids that played for me came up on the bleachers and sat next to me, and he said, "Coach, he couldn't have played for you, could he?" And I said, "That's the biggest compliment you could ever give me." So I think if we just think back over all these different things that occurred, it was a relationship that I had with kids that I could have never had any other way. I wouldn't take anything for the 14 years really, the years that I coached the varsity, the 14 years that I was in this school. And I just really want to thank everybody that played for me, because you all taught me so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Lou. And our last speaker for today is Sue Randolph. She's the daughter of Major and Ola Randolph. She has 8 siblings. She's a proud mother of 2 sons and 8 foster children. I heard that. She worked for Hanover County Sheriff's Office for 42 years. Retired as a captain, belongs to Mount Zion Church, and sings in the choir, not just this choir. She serves in culinary ministry. She's a member of the Hanover NAACP, past president of the Hanover County Black Heritage Society. She currently serves on the Hanover Community Services, including her term as chairman. She serves on the Virginia 250th Commission for Hanover County, serves on the Untold Stories Committee, and she loves playing cards. Did whist, so watch your money, everybody. But she mainly does it with her family and friends. And phase 10, once a month with a group of great ladies. Okay, phase 10, all right, gotta check this out. So with that, we'd like to welcome Sue.
I must say that everything happens for a reason, and there's a season for everything. Mr. Hugh Flanagan just won me over because I did not have a coach or a person at Lee Davis who would have done any of what he did. He's sincere, he's honest, and if he ever runs for anything in Hanover, I'm gonna vote for him. My story is a story that started when I was young. My mother and my father, Ola and Major Randolph, were the proprietor of a grocery store in Old Church. We were the only black grocery store there. The West store was up the road, and that's where they were. The first thing that was instilled in us was that you're going to respect the people who come in this grocery store, and they're going to respect you also. So we don't see color, my mother would say. We see customers, okay? You may hear me refer to my mother a lot, but my father was a very present person in our family. He was the monarch. You didn't just walk up to Daddy and say, Daddy, can I do this? You go through Mama and Mama went to Daddy, okay? But my father was a very present person in our lives. But Mama was there for us all of the time. We were told that we were responsible for everything in that grocery store. We were responsible for getting in wood in the evenings after we got home from school. We were responsible for pumping gas and oil, getting the eggs from the chickens, feeding the pigs, and we had to do it all. We had responsibility, and it was taught to us at a very early age. There were no favorites in our family but Arlene, okay? Laura. But we were always told that you're going to get respect and you're going to give respect. It started at home. It didn't start when I got to school. It started at home, okay? I have 2 wonderful sons, and they're looking at me like, I don't know what my mama's gonna say, and my mama's don't know what she's gonna say most of the time. But I'm glad that they are here with me this morning. Bobby and Randy Lewis. And they both were students at Lee Davis High School. So we have a family thing going on with Lee Davis, okay? Mechanicsville High School. Not Lee Davis anymore. That's why I like this guy. Okay? I also also have 3 grandchildren, and I have a great-grandson, Rome. And I love them so much. My elementary school was East End Elementary School, all black elementary school. We had old books, but we had teachers, cafeteria workers, principals who cared about us, who looked out for us. And if you didn't do it at school, and you did something at school, your mama had a call before you got home, okay? They knew your parents, they talked to your parents, and you got whatever happened when you got home from school. I don't know what was happening when I got home from school, but I know. I got a whipping a couple of times because I was a big talker, okay? We got on the school bus at 6:45 in the morning. We got home at 4:15 in the evening. The buses were crowded. Some of the children had to stand up. My class was right there at the bus, where the bus would pick us up. We load up on the bus, and I charged to the bus, had to get a seat. And and students were standing up in the aisles, going down the road, traveling. And I didn't think about it then. What would have happened if we had an accident? Okay? There was not a lot of participation at Gandy from the students who lived in the eastern part of the county because we didn't have transportation. We didn't have, our parents were not gonna come to Ashland to pick us up because they were working. Or we couldn't get back to games if there were a game. And some of the games were during the day. I remember Gary Coles and Connell Winfield, who played football for Gandy. I would see them sometimes passing the grocery store, walking home, because they have, I don't know if they had a ride or they walked. 7:30 and 8 o'clock in the evening, they're just getting home from football practice, but they wanted to play. So that's the price they had to pay to play. I left East End and went to John and Gandy. Then you could have gone wherever you wanted to, but I wanted to follow Mary, Ola, Laura, and Major, my brothers, my sisters, because I saw what they brought home, and I just wanted to have that feeling and that be a part of what I saw them enjoy, okay? And so I went to Gandy 1 year, 1968. In 1969, they told me I had to go to Lee Davis. Okay? I went to Lee Davis, and I remember getting on the school bus, and the white children did not want us to sit on the seats with them, so some of us were sitting 2, 3, 4 in the seat. They would make remarks of, if you had a pimple on your face, did that come from drinking too much Pepsi Cola? And so you had to deal with that riding the school bus. It really bothered you, so by the time you got to school, did you really want to do that? No. I told my mother, I said to my mother, Mama, I don't want to go to that school. She said, you know what, Sue? They don't want you there either. Point made. The point that she was trying to make to me, I'm not going to school for a social highlight. I'm going to school to get an education. Refocus. My mother had a way of refocusing us, okay? She was a kind lady, she was an understanding lady. She didn't raise her voice very often, but when she had to make her point, she made her point, and I respect her for that. Okay, so we were at Lee Davis, and one day I was going to the library, and you had to walk up these 3 little steps. And there were 3 white boys standing there. They told me, go around. And I was like, excuse me? They said, go around. I said, no, I'm not going around, I'm going up these steps right here. So one boy had the audacity and the nerve and the stupidity to put his hands on me. He pushed me. I had a brother cousin and another cousin, and I played with them. They were all boys. Whatever I had in my hand, I dropped. I was ready to fight. I was. My mother said that respect is earned, and I was going to get respect that day. When he put his hand on me, I kicked him. And then I went in my stance. Thank God, I never ever told that story because I didn't get sent to the office, okay? But the thing was, you know what? They got out of my way. I went up those steps, and I went to the house. You talk about counselors and teachers and coaches. At Lee Davis, they did not care whether we went to college. They didn't even talk to us about being involved in anything, organizations or anything else. I remember we went to the pep rally one time, and for whatever reason, we all sat together as black people. And when they said, all for Confederates, stand up and holler. So we all sat there, and all the white kids stood up. So Mr. Eller at that time was our principal. So he called the meeting for all the black students. He wanted to know what the problem was. And so you knew we were in trouble then if he didn't think there was a problem. So we had some discussion back and forth. He said, well, if y'all are not going to stand up at the pep rally, you're not going. Throw me in the bright patch. I didn't want to go to the pep rally anyway. So we didn't go. Then he had and Mr. Steele, you know, you've heard part of the story before, and he said, I didn't know any of that was going on. But it happened. Then we had another meeting about why we not active in what was going on at the school. Okay, there were 4 of us, Darlene Randolph, Ernestine Cosby, Collis Page, and Sue Randolph. We joined the drill team, okay? We didn't have to yell out all from Confederates. We just marched and put our little white boots on and our little short shorts and our little blue jackets, and we thought we were cute. Until one year, we were marching down Broad Street in the parade, okay? And we were standing there, we were about to march, and there were some black people standing on the side. They said, why are you all name-called marching behind a damn Confederate flag? Okay, so now I'm getting in front of the blacks and the whites, okay? And I just looked straight ahead. We were scared. Because we wanted to be a part of the school activity, but now we're getting in front of the blacks and we're getting in front of the whites who didn't want us there, so where are we? It wasn't easy. It wasn't easy at all. I was the only black person in most of my classes because my sisters and my mother were responsible for me taking college preparatory classes, okay? And so there were none other than myself in any of those classes except for my last year at Lee Davis. Thomas Dandridge and Bernard Giles were in my English classes. And we had a really nice lady by the name of little young lady by the name of Miss Reynolds. And she was just as nice and kind as she could be. There were, let's see, Mr. Steels, Mr. Bates, Mr. Carter, Mr. Fields, Mr. Phelps, Frankie Phelps, Ms. Ware, and Mr. Harder were our black instructors, educators. And I guess they said we don't need any more than this because we don't have any black children here anyway. I had no black instructors other than Mr. Steele's algebra. And I passed that with an A. It was not easy being a black student at Lee Davis High School. And like my mother said, we would go to the football games, go to the football games and we're sitting up in the bleachers and you look up and there's this white horse with this white guy with this Confederate uniform on and hat with his Confederate flag running down the side of the football field. And I couldn't wait to get home to tell my mama. I said, Mama, you know what? Did they not realize that the Confederates lost the war? Why are we celebrating this? They lost. And she said, well, you know what? Some people just don't know what to do about certain things. And I was like, okay, Mama, wrong answer. They lost. But my mother was a very good and loving person. And the reason that you all heard that I had foster children, because my mother had foster children. Okay? And that love that she passed on was passed on to me to share. And I would not regret anything that I've done in my whole life, because those children gave me just as much as I was able to give them. I remember on the basketball team, there was Robert Spike Lewis, George Randolph, Luther Holmes, and Bernard Giles. They encountered some of the same things that we did on the drill team. Because whenever they would go play basketball, they were up against being called names. And they probably were afraid too, wasn't they? I remember one year, they went somewhere, I don't know if it was Holland Springs. They had to be escorted out of the gym because of the teams were so mean and ugly to them. But that didn't stop us from participating in some of the things that we really wanted to participate in, because we were in high school and you're supposed to have a life, okay? This is all I have. I don't have a whole lot more. You know, I talked about being prepared for things when I first started to work in the grocery store that we had. And my mother and father said that we saw no color. Then I went to Easton, and that was predominantly black. Then I went to Gandy one year, then I had to go to Stonewall, and I had to go to Lee Davis. And then I went to VCU. And that was a little bit better because there were more white students than black. I didn't go to HBCU like my sisters. My father and mother probably couldn't afford it after they paid for them to go. But anyhow, I went to VCU, and that was a learning experience also. Didn't finish VCU, but then I started to work at the Hanover County Sheriff's Office, where I started in 1978. The first black female to be there. They didn't know what to do with me. And my mother wanted a fool, and she said, well, so you do what you gotta do. And I learned. You take advantage of whatever, if there were classes or conferences or something, you attend, you go. But the thing that really got me was, it was 27 years later that they hired another black female. 27 years. There were black males who came and left, and black males who came and left, but 27 years before they hired another black female. And kudos to my fellow officers back there. I started to work in General District Court, and I had a judge who one day asked me, Sue, have you ever thought how it would be to be white? I said, no, never have. But one day I sat in the courtroom listening to him, and he told a story about when he was in the Army and how this black fellow was in the kitchen cooking and preparing for them to eat. And the flour, by some ways or another, got thrown all over him. He was white then, Sue. I said, really? And so from then they called him Old White Joe. Thing that bothers me about that is, this is a man that's deciding who's going to jail and who's not going to jail. Who's going to get what fine and who's not going to get what fine. Those are the things that we're up against as being black people. And it hasn't changed that much. I'm not gonna sit up here and say that it's all okay. It's not. It's not. But we don't give up. There are a lot of organizations that I am involved in, and I enjoy each and every one of them with people of all colors. Because at this point in time in my life, I want to build a community. I want to build relationships. I want to build strength. If we feed into negativity, it'll keep growing. You don't feed into it, it dies. Both my sons went to Lee Davis, as I said earlier. My oldest son, Bobby, he played football. And he was the king his last year at Lee Davis, which surprised me. I was afraid for the child if he was sitting up. But he was very popular. He was a nice young man. My son, Randy, LeBron, and Orlando played mechanics for Little League. And they were called the Dream Team. Okay? They went to Stonewall, and they played at Stonewall. So when they got to Lee Davis, the coach made the mistake of saying, I'm gonna bust up the Dream Team. Okay? And when he said he was gonna bust up the Dream Team, Sue busted up into the office with me. Okay? Because these are investments for me. Okay? The next year, not because I busted up into the office, it's because Randy had capabilities of playing baseball. The next year he made it. There are not a lot of families who would take that stand or fight for their children, okay? We need to be there for our children, all the time. It's important. Please don't leave our young ones, and I'm not saying this to black people, I'm saying it to people. Watch your children. Watch how people treat your children, especially when they're in school and you're not there with them. You just don't know what's going on. Be aware and be there to see what's going on with your children. They're your investments. My mother and father invested in me. They invested in my sisters and my brothers and all the children that they've ever been around. They invested in them because they knew the importance of investing. Racial disparity is going to go until people drop dead, okay? It depends on how you accept it and what you do about it. Keep on feeding it, it'll keep on living. Ignore it, it'll die. Don't feed it. Don't feed it. I don't feed into anything that I don't want in my soul or my spirit. Because I want it to do what? Die or go away, take up home somewhere else. I spoke to a friend of mine, Jamie. I don't know if Jamie's still here or not. But on Tuesday, oh, hey, Jamie. Jamie calls and checks on me on the regular. And that was a little incident that happened with me. And on Tuesday morning, I got up to go to the store, and my arm started hurting, and my mouth started getting numb right here. And I was like, not a good sign. So I went to the emergency room, and they sent me to the hospital. And they couldn't wait to get rid of me out of the hospital because I was like, I'm ready to go, I'm ready to go. They took all these tests and observed me for the day, and I went home the next morning. That was on Tuesday night, Wednesday I went home. Was it on Thursday that we played pickleball? This is my pickleball teacher right here. My sister and I played pickleball on Thursday. On Friday, I went on with my life. Do not allow people to take your joy. Do not allow people to inflict negativity to you. I don't care what color they are. Really don't. The devil comes in all kinds of colors. Be aware. I know this is probably not a part of what I say, but they had their turn, so I'm having my turn. But I truly, 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 truly want all of you to start thinking about who you are. And I don't care how old you are or how young you are. Think about your health. Think about the direction you're going in. Think about the feelings of persons that's sitting beside you or the person you don't know. It's important that we start generating negative, get rid of negative stuff and start generating positive things. It's easier to smile and be nice than it is to be mean and manipulative. So today, this is a new beginning for all of us. Because we were allowed to wake up this morning. We were allowed to hear this fine man, Mr. Flanagan, that I had the pleasure of sitting beside and being here with. And it wasn't by chance, it was by design that we're here together. It is. Because I heard so many wonderful things about him, and I said, who is this man? I thought the Savior had been here one time. But it is. He really moved me tonight. But I hope something that everybody on this panel have said to you will make a difference in your life tomorrow, or even today.
Thank you, Sue. Appreciate it. Appreciate all that you had to say. Sue is my buddy. We interact with her a lot. So actually, Sue, my wife is here. So you say you want to talk to her? She's
Where's
here.
your wife?
In the red coat.
I got you. The reason he said that is because, I'm sorry, because I have been asking for her phone number, to call her. My son, Randy, had kidney disease. And he had been told that it would be 2.5 to 5 years before he get a kidney. The Tuesday before Christmas, Randy called his mother. And I was in the grocery store. And he said, Mama, we're going to MCD. I said, for what? He said, the kidney. I said, the kidney? And I immediately started praising God and thanking him. Yes. That Tuesday night, we were at MCD at 11:30. Wednesday morning, Randy had a 23-year-old kidney. We were in MCD until Christmas Day. Randy's kidney, they said, woke up Friday. No blood in his urine, praise God. Christmas evening at 5 o'clock, we went home. Okay? That's one excuse why I didn't call you. The other excuse is, there are a minute, but we'll talk. That was just one of the excuses, and we've been trying to get together because she's been a very instrumental person in some things that we're doing in Hanover County for the 250 Commission, okay? Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Thank you. Let us show all of our panel our great appreciation for what they shared with us. And to our panel, thank you for all of your stories. We see that there is so much more you could have shared with us. And at some point in time, we hope you will get a chance to hear all of your additional stories, whether it's one-on-one or whether it's in certain or group stories. But again, we thank you for all that you've done.
Well, good evening, everybody, and we certainly appreciate what has been shared to this moment. If there was a summary observation about what has been shared, the first point, if we heard everybody, we heard that all of us have been victims and participants in a culturally defined pattern of separation. And whether you call it a plantationocracy, a plantocracy, whether or not we have been formed in categories of separation. In categories of separation that require that we engage each other's differences using an interpretive framework of deficiency, or something is out of order. That's one lesson we learned tonight, that every one of them could articulate and speak in some ways about how they were exposed to principles of separation. If there's something else that is clear in what we heard today, is ignorance. Ignorance of history, ignorance of each other, and the ignorance that allows us to presume that our personal relationships are the sum total of what's going on in the world. And we think because we had a good relationship with somebody, then all is well. There's no racial problem, we get along. And that ignorance feeds the racial problem because you assume that the systemic and structural realities that are still shaping the consciousness of our world and our community are no longer operative or were never operative because some of my best friends were black. Of course, one of the most profound things I heard today comes from my friend Lou Flanagan. What the hell is going on? And when Lou would make that statement, and he said it, well, no, that was a common statement by Lou Flanagan. And he was not speaking an expletive or a curse word. He was raising a profound question. Why is your behavior diminishing our standards of excellency and harming our possibilities of achieving that which we have the capacity to do? What the hell is going on? And so, Lou, you might come up here now and ask Hanover County, what the hell is going on? But to put it simply, to understand what it means to live together, Martin Luther King wrote a book and said, where do we go from here? Chaos or community? I'm fearful, Hanover. But I will never give up hope, and I will let no one steal my joy and keep my eyes off the prize. I'm not a native Hanoverian. My wife and I came here in 1976. I had worked at the Hanover, what was called then the Hanover Learning Center for boys. While I was in graduate school in Richmond, that's where I worked. Then I left to go to New York to pursue PhD studies. When we came back, someone told us to move into Hanover. Shay Grimes lived in Ashland, and some others come to Ashland. Our entrance into Hanover was painful, y'all. Can I tell you the first couple things we experienced in Hanover? My wife had applied to be a teacher. She sent her records and everything. She'd already taught in Richmond. Then we went to New York, and she was director of an early childhood center. Hanover was excited and said, wow, your records, your grades, the work you've done, your references is outstanding. But when we drove down from New York City for her appointment, we were told there were no vacancies. And the one that on paper was being affirmed was not even allowed to interview. And then the most painful part is when we took our children to register, my daughter to register at Henry Clay, and Mr. Hall was the principal, been here almost 50 years. Mr. Hall had started inquiring and was talking to my wife, and he said, I need you. We got vacancies right now that I need you. That was how I was introduced to Hanover family. And then the next step, the very next year, a couple years later, I met with a group of school teachers and parents in Hanover County, and they wanted to get a black principal at Patrick Henry High School. And I wrote a letter on behalf of the group to the superintendent, affirming the need for leadership from black people in the educational process. My letter was sent to the president of the University of Virginia Union University, where I was on the faculty. I had written the letter on Virginia Union letterhead. And the superintendent wrote a letter to the president of Virginia Union University saying, I want to bring to your attention that you have in your employ, a young man who's trying to disrupt our good relationship with Negroes in Hanover County. Dr. Gill? And the president, Dr. James, he said, Dr. Kenny, what do you want me to do with this? And I said, well, he said, no, I want you to respond. And if you need to respond, please continue to use Virginia Union letterhead. I wrote a letter this time to the Board of Supervisors and everything. But my greatest concern was not how he responded, but how the people on the committee, after I got that, I told them what they had done to me, they said, well, don't tell them we were on the committee. Don't let them know, don't let them. And I was appalled at the fear of brothers and sisters that what might be done to them because they dared to be a participant in writing this letter. But thanks be to God, as I close, you know what the good news is? Tina and I considered moving, amen. But the day she was denied by Hanover, my wife went to Richmond and was trying to get on the substitute list, and her supervisor, when she was there before, said, oh no, you won't substitute in anything in Richmond, Virginia. If we don't have a vacancy, we're going to make one for you to teach. And for 35 years, she taught children with exceptionalities, spending the last 15 or 20 years working with autistic children and being named the Teacher of the Year in Richmond, Virginia, after having been rejected by. That's where we started, y'all. And there are other stories I could tell about that, but that's not my testimony. My testimony is the good news that I experienced people, because when I wrote that letter, the Board of Supervisors wrote back to me and said, we appreciate any citizen in our county who is willing to invest and take time and energy in the future of our. But I got a personal letter from a lady named Nana Peace. Personally apologizing. And then I developed a relationship with her. And then I started coaching football, refereeing games. My kids were all in Hanover. And then I got called to a church called Ebenezer. In Negro Foot, Virginia. I see the Flanagan boys there. And I couldn't understand it. And then I learned the history of why they called it Negro Foot. And somehow, except for a little hiatus when I went to teach in Chicago, I have been there all of this. Hanover's my home. My wife recognized it, and guess what? Hanover is where we're going to die. No, Hanover, and if I have a grave, it's going to be in Hanover. It's where my children have grown up, where I've developed relationships. Come on, huh? And like, I've been knowing Lou Flanagan for years, and knowing his heart and our arguments and our debates, huh? Our home became the place where the kids could come. We have 3 birth children, but 4 other young men we took into our home. In Hanover, I developed relationships. We grew here, pluses and minuses, but guess what? We're living, and we got our eyes on the prize, and no matter how much you try to put me down, still we rise. Still we rise. If we could hear Maya Angelou, still we rise. And so basically now, you know what it's time for Hanover to do? If you study history, I see some professors here, whenever this nation has made progress, there has been a reactionary response that creates regress. No, just all you got to do is you can start identifying the epochs where we seem to be moving forward, and the minute you start moving forward, there was a group formed and somebody came together to do what? Take it back. Take it back. take it back. And I'm afraid right now we're in a regress era. The question is, do we have the commitment? Do we have the values, the principles, the energy to say, no, we know where we're going. We're not going to go to chaos. We're going to go community. There is so much possibility in this place called Hanover. But it doesn't happen by accident. It happens when people of faith, integrity, and commitment say, we want to be family, not to be waging war unto death. Thank you.
Praise him with the timbrel and dance. Praise him with the sound of the drum. Praise him with the psaltery and harp. Let everything that hath breath praise the Lord. Praise him with timbrel and dance. Praise him on the high sounding cymbal. Praise him with the string instruments. Let everything that hath breath praise the Lord. Oh, magnify the Lord. Magnify the Lord with me. Magnify the Lord. Oh, magnify the Lord with me. Magnify the Lord. Magnify the Lord with me. Magnify the Lord. Let us exalt his name together. Praise him with the cymbal and dance. Praise him with the sound of the trumpet. Praise him with the psaltery and harp. Let everything that hath breath praise the Lord. Praise him with timbrel and dance. Praise him on the high sounding cymbal. Praise him with the string instruments. Let everything that hath breath praise the Lord. Oh, magnify the Lord. Magnify the Lord with me. Magnify the Lord. Oh, magnify the Lord with me. Magnify the Lord. Magnify the Lord with me. Magnify the Lord. Let us exalt his name together. Oh, be joyful, all ye people. Oh, be joyful and clap your hands. Oh, be joyful, all ye people. Oh, be joyful and clap your hands. Oh, be joyful, all ye people. Oh, be joyful and clap your hands. Oh, be joyful, all ye people. Oh, be joyful and clap your hands. Oh, be joyful, all ye people. Oh, be joyful and clap your hands. Oh, be joyful, all ye people. Oh, be joyful and clap your hands. Oh, be joyful, all ye people. Oh, be joyful and clap your hands. Oh, be joyful, all ye people. Oh, be joyful and clap your hands. Oh, be joyful, all ye people. Oh, be joyful and clap your hands. Oh, be joyful, all ye people. Oh, be joyful and clap your hands. Oh, praise him. 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 Oh, praise him.
Come on, everybody, put your hands together. If you came out to give God some praise, let me see you clap your hands. Let me see you stand to your feet and lift up the name of Jesus.
Say, lift him up, lift him up, lift him up, lift him up. This is the day the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad in it.
Praise the Lord.